Hello, hello, hello. We are so happy to be back on this amazing night of festivities and a great day here in Los Angeles when it's rained. Rain causes people to get into all sorts of moods, and most importantly, it wreaks havoc on our transportation. and oh boy, that it's never a good thing when that happens. But what happens when it rains is that you become very melancholy as well, and so you reminisce on what has happened to you this particular week, this particular month. And so, being February, we just finished the Super Bowl not too long ago. It's a huge national occurrence, and of course, we saw something that provoked national conversation, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And the person speaking to you right now is Alex Venegas, and I have the blessing of moderating this panel every week, and I'm joined by two formidable women. To my left is Miss Winter White. How are you, Miss Winter?
I'm doing great.
Thank you for joining us. And the lovely Tehu Smythe is to my right. How are you, Tehu?
Good evening. Very well, thank you.
So, as I was saying, we just witnessed this national occurrence. And really, the Super Bowl is kind of our coming together as a country to focus all eyeballs on one single event. And it's very evocative. We saw Lady Gaga do an amazing, impeccable rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. She really showed us a different facet of her life. And, looking at Lady Gaga, we realize this is an artist who has done a lot for society, really compelling people to think differently about gay rights, about what it means to be a woman who owns her sexuality, etc. But the other performer of this event called Super Bowl 50 was Beyonce. And Beyonce caused quite a stir and really riled people in this country for a number of reasons. And that is going to really inform the topic of conversation for this episode. And it's about when artists make powerful statements. How do we as a society, as a national people, how do we interpret their message, and what in our own personal experiences do we call upon when interpreting their message, right? Artists are supposed to provoke. They're supposed to provoke something. And sometimes it's a melancholy, and sometimes it's a sheer joy. But sometimes they may strike a chord or really pull on a fiber that is so sensitive that we react very viscerally. And so, Winter, you were the champion and the woman who brought this to our attention, and you're also this formidable encyclopedia of pop culture. And so you've been following Beyonce for a very long time as an artist, and so we want you to really help us really digest this occurrence, this video, and then this performance, and this whole discourse on Beyonce and what she's trying to tell the world.
So I realize that I'm looking at her performance through the eyes of a Black woman. So my initial reaction to not only the formation video, but to the Super Bowl performance was one of joy, and I was really proud, and I just was excited to see it. I actually put up on my Twitter, I said, wow, I really love Beyonce concerts with football intermissions, because I thought it was incredible. I thought that she made such a powerful statement with, at the same time, being very artistic and sensitive. However, later on, you go to social media to kind of get the temperature of what people were thinking. And Rudy Giuliani was one who went on air and said that he felt the Super Bowl performance was insensitive to police officers because she had her backup dancers dressed as Black Panthers, and that it was directly disrespectful to police officers who had, ushered Beyonce into the stadium and gotten her home safely. And, all over, it seemed that white people were up in arms with just that visual. So that was one part. And then, the formation video, people were really upset, there's actually an SNL skit that we watched earlier where it was kind of parroting the day Beyonce turned black. And white people were so surprised. Oh my God, she's talking about all of these black things, Black Lives Matter, hands up, don't shoot. If you've seen the video, there's a lot of visuals talking, with reference to Hurricane Katrina, like I said, with the Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of the language is just very direct. When she talks about her daughter, I think the lyric is, I like my baby hair with afros and I like my Negro nose with Jackson 5 nostrils. So she's talking about her daughter and her husband. And she's saying, I'm proud of this. And she's gotten a lot of flack over, people calling her husband a camel, referencing him that he looks like a camel. So that was kind of her jab back. Like, that's what I like my man to look like. Even BET made a reference to her daughter's hair, saying that her daughter's hair was nappy. After she had gotten the Michael Jackson Vanguard Award, they had kind of like a top 5 things that Blue Ivy was thinking when her mom got the award. And they'd said, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, I wish my mom would have done my hair for this event. So, and it was a huge deal. They had to retract and apologize for that statement. And what I've noticed after that, not only did the show on BET get canceled a few months later, but Beyonce and Jay-Z have never again supported BET or been at an event for BET. So saying all that to say, when I saw this, I, like I said, was elated because I felt like she was kind of getting back at her critics and saying, I'm proud of who I am. And I was surprised at how much people, particularly of other ethnicities, were against it and felt offended. And so I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to dive into why are people offended by that.
Well, I think I've not been the most avid follower of Beyonce over time. I do love her music, and if it comes on in any kind of social context, it's always a recipe for elation and jubilation. I can think of single ladies and how powerful and actually how influential that was throughout our culture, right? It was a celebration of womanhood and the fact that sometimes being single is actually a recipe for a good time and for attention and for self-empowerment and determination if you are a woman and you don't need a man to feel good and to have value. It made its way into Sarah Jessica Parker and Sex and the City,
yep.
number 2, right?
Yep.
And that was the sort of main and 15 minutes of the movie. So I think over time she's been seen as this heroic heroine, right? This woman who celebrates the sexuality of women and is unapologetic. So her unapologetic side now shifted focus to blackness. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden people were like, whoa, that is a lot more narrow, more narrow a target and more narrow an agenda. And people, I think, reacted so viscerally because there was a mirror that was put not by the Black Lives Matter group or by Jesse Jackson or by Cornel West or Al Sharpton. This was Beyonce. This was the beautiful seductress heroine who we've extolled and maybe fantasized about for many years, and now she's telling us you're evil. Right? You're evil because maybe not because you hold these truths to be self-evident, but because you've been negligent and you've been quiet and you've stood by the sidelines observing all of this that's happened and have not cared.
I'm just so curious to know the audience that was offended by the video. Who is the audience? Because my guess is that if the audience is the mainstream culture who doesn't normally have to think about culture or race because it doesn't directly impact them, they're directly the first ones that are going to speak up and be like, whoa, which was very much so in a Saturday Night Live skit, actually. It became very obvious because it's unfamiliar again. When it's unfamiliar, its experience is alienating. I just wonder if who the audience is that has been massively offended is, and I would urge our listeners to speak up. If you have thoughts on this, or if it's offended you, please speak up so we can know about this. Because I would assume that people of an ethnic background would see it as empowerment and feel like their voices might be heard, and that Beyonce's in a powerful position and she's doing really good work out there to getting the message across. But perhaps we got it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes me think, for the people who were offended, did they feel like Beyonce was another person before she did this? A lot of times we think about our artists and you kind of create this persona of who they are. And you think, oh, Beyonce is the quiet, she's the safe Black woman. She's not in your face. She's, always blonde and light skinned. And she's the Black woman that's safe and makes you feel kind of good that you like her as an artist. So did she flip it? And now people think, she's not that safe. She's not that person that we, created in our head to be. She's actually kind of like that loud Black woman who's angry.
I mean, if this just brought up something for me as you just said that. If we reference this is a controversial music video. If we reference this to the music video that Madonna did, Living, Like a Prayer, where she was dancing, with kind of right in front of burning crosses, trying to make a statement about religion. Is it really that different?
No.
That was controversial.
Very. And she had a Black man play Jesus.
Exactly.
And that was huge.
Huge.
But people looked at, while there were definitely critics and, people looked at that as pushing the envelope, I almost feel like it was accepted because we look at Madonna as an envelope pusher. She was safe to do that. She's been pushing the envelope forever. And it was almost looked at by a lot of people as a business move. Mm-hmm. Where it sparked discussion and now people want to go out and that was one of her biggest records ever. Mm-hmm. Whereas some people are saying this is going to alienate Beyonce from her audience. This is not a good move business-wise for her. This could kill her career. We never talked about what Madonna did as killing her career. Mm-hmm. There were discussions about it. It definitely brought anger, but her career wasn't in jeopardy. I've heard people say that Beyonce's career may be in jeopardy for going down this road.
Well, and I think that has been very pointedly directed at the fact that some have felt that she is inciting the Black community to take down these institutions that we have held so dear. And there are some resistance aspects of the Black Lives Matter movement that do sort of tacitly suggest that we need to basically raise the police state and break them down, etc., because they have been so hostile toward Black young men, especially. However, hostility aside, I think we need to really examine her artistic merit and her artistic choices. And from having seen the video, I think when Black women come together to say we need to stand together and raise the bar and get information, meaning get ready to, do something about your life against a society that may be pushing its way against you. It means do everything in your power to prove them wrong. Right. I think in our country right now, there's so much division and so many schisms that are being raised by this vitriol, especially coming from the right, that says that there are certain people that belong in this country and that are certain people that are supposed to succeed, and everybody else can go basically find their death. I think a woman who says, you know what, own who you are, be proud of who you are, and show society how wonderful you can be, is not insightful toward mutiny or a coup or anything of that nature. It's just that sometimes these soldiers in our realm need to remind us that we need to bring our A game. And we were talking about that in another episode. Sometimes you have to be reminded that you can't rest on your laurels and let society basically dictate how you're going to succeed and how you're going to fail. That is your own prerogative. And, information has that sense. Formation means that you need to be well formed and that you need to be strengthened by everything that you do. And formation is part and parcel of education and empowerment and success. You need to really understand that it is a battle cry, but not a battle cry to defeat everything that we've as a country put together, but to really strive toward excellence, and excellence is what is going to make our society better.
Well, I don't want to forget the other perspective, because everyone has his perspective. And on the flip side, I want to be compassionate to our listeners who don't always agree with us. And we actually got a direct message via Facebook with regards to the video. One of our listeners had a friend who posted about the video, and the listener thought that this post was really angry and it didn't talk about uniting us. So I'm going to read exactly what the post was, and then I'm going to read what our listener responded to. So this post says, "Dear bothered white people, chill out. Yes, Beyonce, Obama, and Michelle are showing out and calling us to unite. And yes, we will. However, pro-black is not anti-white. Don't worry. We don't plan on making you slaves for 400 plus years, raping your wives, children, and husbands, using your babies and toddlers as alligator bait in the swamps of Florida, subjecting you to Barack Obama laws like Jim Crow or whatever, preventing you from getting home loans, which prevents your wealth, locking up your male population, moving you into ghettos like a science project, moving cocaine and other drugs into your neighborhood to destroy your community, yada, yada, yada." So he goes on and just talks about all of the things that black people have had to go through. So
and that was posted by the guy that plays Hakeem on Empire.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep. I didn't even recognize that. Yep. So the response from the reader said, apparently there must be a bunch of talk about a bunch of shit. I guess I'm missing it. I look forward to you guys dissecting all of this for the listeners, because Hakeem's way is irritating me. Yes, unite. Go get shit done. But how many years will white people be made to feel guilty as well? 400 years more? Will the black community still choose to obsess over their past rather than plan their future? Let's see. I wouldn't say this on Facebook because then I'll get attacked by plenty of folks. But often as a white person, it also gets exhausting to constantly go back to ground zero 400 years ago. Please educate the white listeners. Don't just bitch at us, because then we don't listen for sure.
Okay, and we have to say that that was from a white listener exposing a view that I think has a lot of value, in the sense that in the national discourse on race relations, I think that, and Winter, you've said this many times, we can't lay blame on an entire race for representatives of that race doing some ridiculous, evil, noxious things. We have to own that the perpetrators of racism on every single side of the equation basically are responding to their own sort of personal evaluations, and then they are broadcasting them on an entire society. And I think what we need to do as people, as ethnic people, is to constantly check our own behavior, the behavior of our people, and then realize that the only way that we're going to make a positive difference is by doing concrete things to make society better. So whether that means organizing a block club, whether that means, pulling our resources together to get more ethnic children into good schools so that they can be productive members of society. I mean, a lot of times I think to myself, that black kid that lives down the street from my house that I know has dropped out of school, if I showed a little concern for him by maybe reaching out to him or seeing how I can help, I may be doing more for society with that than any other way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that brings to mind kind of this Black Lives Matter movement. And I think a lot of people you have people who support it, and then you have people who are like, all lives matter, and are offended by the imagery that Beyonce has of the little kid, with his hands up, don't shoot, dancing in front of the cops. And, it's like, no, it's not just black people getting killed by the cops.
It's exposing people to what's uncomfortable and what they don't understand. It kind of makes sense. This is my take on it. So I actually see both sides, and I see a little bit what's going on. So my take on this is as follows. Beyonce is in a position of power and she has a lot of fans. If she's able to make a stand and step up to that position and make voices heard to kind of implement some kind of change or movement in our society, or at least make people aware, good on her. I'm going to applaud her. I think that's fantastic. You can't do that unless you have a controversial music video. There's no way to do that nicely. You have to do it and then be prepared for the consequences. So I applaud her. On the other hand, I also see the argument sometimes that the mainstream kind of white culture will make with, well, this doesn't really affect me and I find this offensive, and what can I do? There is that side to it as well. So I do, empathize, because you can't accomplish one without the other. If you have one person that's in a position and they're trying to make their voice heard, they're going to have to do this, and that's going to definitely cause some sort of alienation, because they're going to have to focus on the things that are relevant in their culture, like that kid holding his hand up. Don't shoot is what's going on. This is racial profiling. It's all over the news. It's a big topic. That what happened with Katrina, people aren't really aware of the implications of how that really affected a lot of people's lives. And the trauma that was involved for people in those situations. So, you can't have it both ways. Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like she's trying to get a message across, and anyone who's trying to get a message across is always going to have a lot of backlash. That's just the way it is, And
I just always like to remind people that that you need to really understand what empathy means and what it entails. And empathy means that you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and that's not always easy, because we're all a compendium of our life's experiences. Right? We are who we are based on our upbringing, based on the challenges we've had, the obstacles that we've overcome. But here's one thing about empathy. Here in the city of Los Angeles, if you live in South LA, which is where I live, and you call the police about something that's going on in your neighborhood, it's not somebody got shot, but it's something is not quite right. The response time, if you're in South LA, is going to be they've done studies about this. It's going to be 4 to 5 times longer than if you made that exact same phone call here in Santa Monica, for example. Now, there's two different police departments, but
That's interesting.
Yeah, but let's not say it's Santa Monica. Let's say it's still an LAPD area like Hancock Park. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you're in Hancock Park and you make that phone call, and let's say the operator perceives you to be somebody of a certain race in Hancock Park versus that person in South LA, there are studies that have been made that your response times are going to be different. Okay, so there, in that particular situation, you are supposed to be on an equal footing when you are engaging with the police. Now, this is not violence. This is no one being shot. This is just you calling a center for the protection of the police department of the city of Los Angeles. That in and of itself has, and in my situation, it has caused me great anguish to know that because of where I live, the services that are supposed to be rendered to me as a tax-paying citizen of the city are not the same as somebody that lives in a more affluent neighborhood. Okay, and it may not be racial. And in some cases it's not, but there is a disparity based on socioeconomic factors. So the fact that a poor young kid from whatever neighborhood that is wearing a certain hoodie or whatever is going to be treated differently than any other person in the society is a cause for a cry of injustice. Now, what can we do as a society to fix that? I think that we need to educate our police on cultural intelligence and get them to understand that when they see someone with this profile, let's say that they feel endangered. If I were that person, I would aim for anything below the groin area. right? I would aim to incapacitate that person so that they would not be a lethal danger to me. If I take down this guy from the waist down, I may cause them to be in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives, but they still have lives. I wouldn't go for anything in the heart area or the head or whatever, because that means an end of life.
This is very interesting. So someone from the police department came into a conference I was attending and got absolutely slammed by a whole room full of mental health professionals that were interrogating and questioning him as to what is this process of racial profiling that goes on in the police department, and what kind of diversity or cultural training do they have? And bless his heart, he was a young guy. He was actually from an Armenian background. And he really had to stand his ground. There was about 100 mental health professionals there that were really scrutinizing him and trying to find out what this process is. And the response was astonishing. So his response was to how long of a training the police department has for racial profiling or anything to do with culture, ethnicity is 2 weeks. That's all. And my question to him was, and exactly what does that training involve? And at which point he actually was really stumbling and staggering to get words out because of the shame that he felt with it. And it was really, there's no answer. Anything of color is fair target. That is no standard. That's a ridiculous standard.
Right.
He knew it. He agreed. And he also explained that a lot of times the recruits for people that, for the police departments and things like that, are people necessarily that don't have any understanding or never interacted with other races. So it's a very specific mindset. Anything that's not white is fair game. Wow. That was really astonishing to me. Like I walked around in a daze for a while with that news, but it also explains how our profiling is set up and what's happening.
Right.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's something that I struggle with, because I like to be everybody's friend, and I've like I said, I have friends from all over the color spectrum, and
As do I.
And I'm grateful for all of my friends that have a rich understanding of each other's culture, and I think that all my friends are very culturally literate, and so I think the cultural literacy in the age of a Beyonce video of this kind is all the more important. And I think our young people is where we really need to focus a lot of our attention, is checking these notions from a very early age. Like, I think universities, for example, should do something about frats and all these other groups that use very demeaning ways of celebrating certain cultures as a way of saying, no, this kind of mentality propagates this notion throughout our society, right? There are better ways for you to celebrate, a culture without, like that one university where in celebrating Black History Month, everybody dressed like a thug and, a rapper or whatever. And they felt like that was a way of celebrating. And it's like, no, it's a very denigrating.
Do you really think that they thought they were celebrating? Or do you think that was the excuse?
Well, I that's what I'm saying. But that kind of behavior, when it's not shot down, and when it's condoned, it sends the message that it's okay. And I think a lot of times people tell me, why do you always feel like you have to be this police state for these kinds of issues? And what I tell them is, it's, as an educated person, it is my responsibility to inform people that their actions, while they may not understand it, have these implications throughout society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also feel that's part of my mission as well, to psychoeducate, which is that word now that's really popular. Essentially, it means that, to just educate people about issues that they may not be aware of or haven't thought about. Because when you are lucky enough to have the education, why not put it to good use and, improve communities and people's well-being.
Well, I think that's where it starts. I feel like, yes, we know outright racism is wrong. I think that in everyone's mind, except for the very few who, are hateful, we know racism is wrong. What I don't think people understand, however, is that the idle sit by and watch things happen and not have an opinion and not try to understand is more dangerous.
Yes.
I think that when racism was, well, I don't want to say bigger than it is now because it's still a big deal, but, back in Jim Crow, back then, I think the people who were hanging Black people from trees were dangerous, but the people who sat idly by were just as dangerous.
Winter,
Absolutely.
you know what I think actually is the most dangerous? The people who pretend that it's not a problem because it doesn't affect me.
Right.
I'm not Black, so therefore it doesn't affect me. It's not my problem. Well, it kind of is. And this is why, because, and I think that's the biggest danger. Racism is no longer in that kind of overt fashion. We have passive racism, and it comes out in these kind of what you call microaggressions, and it's very, very evident. But a lot of, again, people don't know what to say. They don't know what to do, so they prefer not to talk about it.
And what is the solution? Like our writer wrote in and said, well, what can we do? What should we do?
Well, based on my blessed late passing of my wonderful mentor, Dr. Scarborough, who I absolutely adored, God rest her soul, may she rest in peace.
Amazing woman.
I asked her this question, and she was a woman who was very active in her community and of mental health. She was an advocate for exactly this kind of work. And she said to me was to speak up and not be complacent about it. That's the first part. Be proactive. Talk to people that are different than you. Find out what their experiences are. Formulate groups. Find support. She was all about being proactive. And that's what she said was the best thing, or at least a good start that people could do. And I couldn't agree with her more. But it's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah. So I have two comments on that. I think that there is a quote that says that the measure of a man is not how he treats his equals, but how he treats people that are inferior to him. And I think extrapolated to society, a society is a better society when we look at our most marginalized and our most vulnerable people, and we take the time, as Pope Francis reminded us a couple days ago, to really channel our money and our energy to making them much more empowered. And so I think that taking the time and care to look at the people that are vulnerable and less enfranchised, and maybe directing money or time. If it doesn't have to be money, because there'll be people that say, well, money is always just going to get lost. Well, if you dedicate some time, then that might be something that you can do. And so what I am, this is going to be me this week's challenge, is if you are a person that has never been into a primarily ethnic neighborhood, go ahead and take the opportunity to go to that neighborhood and spend some time there, spend some money in that neighborhood, and then sit there for a minute and have interactions with people to understand what some of the dynamics are. Don't be afraid. You're going to be okay. And I say this for people that have maybe not gone into mostly white neighborhoods, for example. If you are a person that has never been to a primarily white neighborhood, please go and be respectful and do what a good member of society does. Spend time there, spend money, and understand the dynamic of that community so that you can get a better understanding of how people interact, how they shop, how they eat, etc. I think we are very segregated in this environment. I can't tell you how many times here in Los Angeles I'll be the only person of my race in that community, and this goes for sometimes when I go to a primarily Black restaurant, and a lot of times I think people are afraid to take that step. Do it. It definitely will change your perspective on that community,
Right,
you'll
because it's
see
not
people,
doing you any favors not
No.
doing it, and it's not
No.
going to serve you very well in other areas. You may not understand that, but the more you interact with people that are different than you, ultimately, the more evolved
And you
you're
know
going to
what?
be, which
And you
is
know what?
going to better improve your life.
I'm going to offer myself, message me on Facebook or on Twitter. I'd be happy to go with you on this journey. If you live here in Los Angeles, I will pay for lunch and I will take you to whatever neighborhood you want of choice. And it will be my honor. And so if you want to take me up on that offer, please write us at Ethnically Correct on our Facebook page or Ethnic Correct on Twitter.
Hell, we might all just join you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, yes. The three
Let's
of
do
us. The three of us will take you wherever you want. The first 10 people to sign up, we are more than happy to do this. We will find the time. For Winter White and for Tehu Smythe and our good friend Dan House, who runs things here in Santa Monica, this is Alex Venegas. Blessings galore.